Hi, this is Nancy Rowe. Today we're discussing Chapter 14, the Law, Rights, and Responsibilities. And in this chapter, we learn about the legal issues that face a journalist, the journalist's rights, and the responsibilities of this profession. Let's start with the rights. The rights primarily are two. First and foremost, of course, is the First Amendment to the Constitution, with which we are constantly bombarded. The understanding of it being that we have a right to free speech. And we don't usually think about the part that says freedom of the press, but the press is expressly mentioned, very unusual, but it's felt that it's very important for the press to have freedom to publish what it wants to publish. And I thought I'm going to digress a minute and talk about an article in the Bangor Daily News in the editorial page yesterday, which is entitled "Prisoners Keep the Right to Publish Their Writings." And this is freedom of the press. There's citizen journalists in prisons, and in Maine, the Department of Corrections had forbidden them to publish under using their own name, and it has been, by a rules change, they have now restored their right. There is a federal law that went into effect only in 2012 that also frees federal prisoners to publish under their own name. So there's a hurrah for the rights of citizen journalists. Okay, then along with the First Amendment, right, is the Freedom of Information Act, last amended by the Congress in 2007, and this gives all journalists the right to know what is happening in federal agencies. It is, in addition to the federal law, each state has a similar law of transparency in government agencies, and all who said what to whom and who wrote what to whom, and all documents and telephone calls and emails are open to scrutiny, even the correspondence of the former Secretary of State, which is getting Mrs. Clinton in big troubles right now. Again, though, this is an important part of our democracy, that we have access to this information. Along with the rights go perils that a journalist must face that limit his ability to do his job. First off, of course, is libel. Libel being defined as doing damage to an individual by making statements that are either false or defamatory that result in making that individual an object of ridicule, hatred, or contempt. Libel can be the basis for some civil lawsuit, and in fact, very complicated lawsuits. And the book, I think, devoted practically 10 pages to the different kinds of lawsuits and different parts that are this and that and the other. Next is a peril. It would be the invasion of privacy. And libel, the distinction being that libel would be damage to an individual's reputation, that is, whereas invasion of privacy would be a violation of that person's right to be left alone and not bothered by a journalist. This can include actual trespassing, whether on the person's actual property or of the person himself, or it might include publishing something in what they call a false light, something about a person that the person might not want published, unwanted publicity. Another legal impediment might be protecting the sources of a journalist. Most states, often a journalist will wish to protect the informant, and sometimes this can be done and sometimes it can't be. But most states have what they call our shield laws, which protects the journalist from giving a source. But interestingly enough, and the ability to use anonymous sources is really important sometimes to excuse me, to get to the source of the whatever I was saying, the importance of the situation. And it's interesting that there is no federal law with the same protection as these shield laws. But in many states, however, you will still not be able to keep your source secret in a criminal trial. I thought this was interesting. In our textbook, Mr. Ken Paulson, the executive director of the First Amendment Center at Vanderbilt, he suggested that if you ask yourself these 4 questions: 1, have I reported fully? 2, have I reported factually? 3, have I reported fairly? And 4, if I reported in good faith. If you can answer yes to those questions, then the law will take care of itself, says Mr. Paulson. Also, of course, I was interested in the copyright law, because I think particularly in a university setting, not only journalists get involved with the copyright law, but so do students and faculty and just about everybody. What can you copy and what can't you copy? Well, there's certainly laws pertaining to that, but I had asked myself, when reading the chapter, well, where's the information about plagiarism? Well, I found out why, because in the last question about plagiarism, copyright, it suggests that we're going to talk about plagiarism in the next chapter under unethical behavior. So evidently, plagiarism is not a law, but an unethical practice. So we'll look forward to the next chapter, and see you then. Bye.